In this short video, I'd like to provide an introduction to cooperative learning. Principal theorists of cooperative learning are the brothers Johnson and Johnson, and this is a paraphrase from an early work of theirs. Cooperation among students who celebrate each other's successes, encourage each other to do homework, and learn to work together, regardless of ethnic backgrounds or gender identification, whether succeeding or struggling, is still rare. So we may put students in groups to have group conversations or to solve a problem. But group work is not cooperative learning. Cooperative learning is highly structured, well-designed, ongoing, and evaluated. Cooperative learning is principally concerned with interaction as a fundamental component of the methodology. There are three basic ways students can interact with each other as they learn. They can compete to see who's the best. For example, if a course has only a set number of A's, then that is a competitive environment. Students in a competitive environment are committed to their own learning and development. The learning and development of their classmates is problematic for them because they're competing. Students can work individualistically towards a goal without paying attention to other students. Now, I'm not saying I'm callously disconnected from my classmates. What I'm saying is that I'm not committed to their thriving in class, other than a moral obligation I may feel. The class does not recognize that commitment. It doesn't count. The third way is to work cooperatively, and that means that I have a vested interest in my classmates' learning as well as my own learning. In order to be cooperative learning, these elements have to be in place. A clearly perceived positive interdependence. Interdependence is key to cooperative learning. Without interdependence, it's group work, right? Let's go into our groups, have a conversation, come back, and report out to the class. I'm not suggesting that that kind of activity is not worthwhile. I'm simply saying that it's not cooperative learning. Cooperative learning has considerable face-to-face interaction. That means it happens regularly throughout the semester. There also must be clearly perceived individual accountability and personal responsibility to achieve the group's goals. This has to do with the free rider tendency. You want to design cooperative learning opportunities so that all of the members of the group are responsible to each other, that they can't succeed unless everyone succeeds. Cooperative learning also requires frequent use of the relevant interpersonal and small group skills, and also frequent and regular group processing of current functioning to improve the group's future effectiveness. So there's a lot of reflection and assessment that happens in cooperative learning. I want to dig a little deeper into this idea of promotive interaction. This means that the students are supporting each other. They're promoting each other. They're providing each other with efficient and effective help and assistance. They're exchanging needed resources such as information and materials. They're processing information more efficiently and effectively than they would do on their own. And they're providing each other with feedback in order to improve their subsequent performance. So this kind of activity, this kind of interaction is not alien to students. Students often take it upon themselves to create their own study groups outside of class. In fact, they prefer to work in these study groups because they know that they can help each other learn. Often that kind of promotive interaction is discouraged in classes. It may be discouraged because of the class size. It may be discouraged because it's perceived as inefficient or ineffective by the instructional leader. It also may be discouraged because of previous experiences of poorly designed cooperative learning, where some students feel like they're taking on all of the work and their group mates are not being productive or not contributing enough. Promotive interaction also is characterized by challenging each other's conclusions and reasoning, because the goal is higher quality decision-making and greater insights into problems being considered. So there's a process orientation here, not just an outcome. Promotive interaction also results in the students advocating for everyone to try really hard. Students can see the responsibility they have to their group members, especially if those groups persist over time. Positive interdependence means that none of us can succeed alone. Unless all of us succeed, none of us succeed. Negative interdependence is the opposite. Like a spelling bee, we're competing with each other. Your success is antithetical to my success. In this particular class, success is a limited resource. Only a few of us can be successful, and our responsibility is to compete with each other to get that success. In cooperative learning, we sink or swim together. Students have a dual responsibility: to learn the assigned material and to assure that all members of the group learn the assigned material. So my responsibility is to myself and to members of the group. Let's go a little bit deeper into interdependence. We already have a sense of positive goal interdependence. I can achieve my goal only if all the members of the group achieve their goals. So we're united around a common goal. That's why we're in the group. Positive reward, which is celebratory interdependence. We all get the same reward. Positive resource interdependence. All of us only get a little bit of the required resources, and we have to share them to complete the task. We have to bring our resources together. We have to combine them in order to reach our goal. Positive role interdependence. So each member of the group has been assigned a complementary and interconnected role with specific responsibilities. And as a member of the group, I have to meet those responsibilities in order to complete our joint task. There's also positive task interdependence. So my group mate can't complete her responsibility unless I complete mine. You can also do some cultural work. We can name our group. We can create a group identity to which the students are committed. If I believe as the instructor that competition sparks students' commitment to achieving learning goals, I can still use competition in cooperative learning by making the groups compete with each other rather than individuals. There's also fantasy interdependence. Imagine that you're on a desert island. So a task is given that requires group members to imagine that they're in a hypothetical situation and they have to save each other. Fantasy interdependence is a way to get the students to think about the notion of interdependence in a low-stakes way. It's important to remember that the goal of cooperative learning is ultimately that when students leave the group and leave the class, they can do these things alone. So some tips for cooperative learning. You have to keep the size of the group small, and small means as few people as possible to achieve the required task. Sometimes groups break down if there are too many members and not enough tasks. That results in the free rider. There's just not enough work for everyone to do. You can also give an individual test to each student. So let's say that you're in the habit of quizzing students every week. You can still do that. Even though students are committed to a cooperative learning model, you can still assess students' individual development. It's also important to observe each group and try to get a sense of the frequency with which each member contributes to the group work. Now that's going to require more than just popping into the group. So when you go to observe the group should know that you're coming to observe, and they should know what you'll be observing for, like why are you there? What do you hope to see? We mentioned this before, to assign students in each group specific roles. Have the students teach what they learned to someone else. So when the groups report out, they're teaching other groups about what their group learned. Let's think about planning for cooperative learning in terms of what you should do before, during, and after. Before working cooperatively, explain why you want the students to do this. What are the benefits? What are the goals you have in mind? You can even talk about the difference between working competitively and working cooperatively. Allow the students to discuss previous experiences that they've had with cooperative learning and share what they liked about it and what they didn't like about it. It's important to identify the qualities that successful cooperative learning might have so that the students know going into cooperative learning what are some things that they should be on the lookout for. You should assign specific roles to each student in each group and explain what your role as the instructor will be. What will you be doing when the students are in their groups? When you visit the students in their groups, what will you be looking for? How will the students know if they're performing effectively? What kind of feedback can they expect? Here are some sample roles that you might want to consider. Of course, you should feel free to make up your own roles and the names for those roles. The roles will change depending on the size of the group and the nature of the task. The director directs the work of the group, organizes the tasks, and makes sure that the group stays on task. The recorder takes notes. The presenter will present to the larger group when called upon by the instructor. The reflector will lead a discussion at the end of group sessions talking about how the group performed. If there is a peer evaluation, the reflector would use that evaluation to lead a discussion around how we did today. How could we improve? The spy can go visit other groups to get a sense of how that other group is approaching the task, or to understand how other groups are working together in their different roles. If the group is called upon to produce or make something, the artist would lead that effort. If they're called upon to create a slideshow, as an example, the artist would lead the effort in creating that presentation. The researcher would identify external resources apart from those provided by the instructor. It's important to start with a low-stakes collaboration, allowing the students to understand and practice their roles. Initially, students will experience cooperative learning as a complex environment. So we want to give them a relatively simple task to complete in this complex environment. Complex tasks and complex environments will be too many barriers for students to overcome. Now, the task shouldn't be too simple. There needs to be enough task to go around, but it shouldn't be high stakes. What we want the students to do is focus some of their attention on the task and some of their attention on working and learning in this new environment. During collaborative learning, what you want to do is observe. Focus on the student's process. Take notes on how they're performing, how they're interacting. Can you distinguish the different roles? And answer questions. After collaborative learning, you want to give the students the chance to reflect, evaluate, and plan. How did this cooperative learning session go? What could I have done better? And plan for the next one. Okay, what's next on our agenda? Let's develop the agenda for our next meeting. Let's create some due dates. Reflection is essential for the success of cooperative learning. Here are some example reflections. My contributions to the group's efforts were: our group can improve by. Some things our group does well include, for example, here's a student peer evaluation sheet. Students can use these to evaluate their group mates. These are confidential, right? They wouldn't be given to the teacher. But this is intra-group content, right? It's not meant to assign a grade. If it's a way for students to demonstrate their commitment to each other and to the process. It's a mechanism of accountability inside of the group. Some work will have to be done so that students understand how to evaluate each other and what are appropriate ways of doing this. This might be an opportunity to do a fishbowl activity where one of the groups engages in peer evaluation and other groups watch them do it and talk about that process. You would also provide self-evaluations. We don't want to do peer evaluations without self-evaluation. So students would ask themselves the same questions of themselves that they would ask of their peers. The Center for Teaching and Learning at Cornell University provides an example of a group work assessment rubric. So here are the categories: contributions and attitude, cooperation with others, focus and commitments, team role fulfillment, ability to communicate, accuracy, and then points and notes are given. So a rubric like this, when given to each of the groups, can help the group evaluate their own individual and group performance. This is really important so that students take ownership of the process. Again, they're not accountable to you, the instructor, they're accountable to each other. So here are the qualities of more and less effective cooperative learning environments. Students need to feel that they're working toward a goal that they could not reach on their own. An emphasis should be on the quality of the process. The structure should support the cohesion and social development of group members. Expectations are clear. which leads to focused effort and low student anxiety. When you intervene in the group, those interventions should result in greater clarity. And so there's a continuous improvement. The group becomes more and more cohesive over time. And finally, the instructor promotes an ever-increasing level of self-directed effort and efficiency. Here are some references for further reading. I'll include more on the blog. If you have any questions, please email me at d'agostino@fordham.edu. Thanks very much.